Welcome, creative adventurers. Thank you for stopping by today. I'm Debbie Cohn with D Cohn Designs. It's week 3 of our summer Scrappy Sizzler Quilt Along. In this video, I'll be showing you how to make 3 blocks. They're all half square triangles. I'll show you how to construct one, and then I'll show you 3 different methods of trimming up those half square triangles. On my makeshift design wall behind me, I have the 3 blocks for this week. This is block number 2. It's called Bake. This is block number 3, it's called Fry. This is block number 4, called Sear. Why did I name the quilt Summer Scrappy Sizzler? Because here in the Arizona Southwest deserts, it gets sizzling hot. It can get up to 115 degrees Fahrenheit or even higher in the summers. So sometimes we'll say, it's roasting out here, it's broiling, I'm frying, it's so hot. I'm baking out here, it's so warm. So those are the reasons I use these terms, these names for the blocks. That's not their real names. It's not the official quilting names, but those are the names I've called them for the purpose of this quilt along. One quick note, if you have downloaded the fabric requirements for this quilt along, go back and check the revised download. I made a mistake and forgot the fabric requirements for the borders. So I've revised that PDF. You want to check it and make a note on your copy or re-download the fabric requirements document. It is correct as of July 5th, 2022. You can find the patterns for all 3 of these blocks on my website in the free patterns section. Just go to my website at dcohndesigns.com. Be sure to download those patterns by August 31st, 2022. The tools you'll need to put together these half square triangle blocks are the usual suspects: a pencil to mark the backs, ruler, a rotary cutter, a mat, and then if you'd like, instead of marking with a pencil, you could use diagonal seam tape and skip marking the backs of those squares if you'd like. Or if you are going to mark the backs, you could use just any ruler you have, or I have this tool that I really like, and that is the medium seam marker. Let me show you like this. This happens to be from Missouri Star Quilt Company, but you can get it from many places. And this makes it quick and easy to mark the backs as well. And I'll show you that in just a few minutes. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make 3 different half square triangle blocks. All of the blocks will be made out of half square triangles. The difference will be in how they're arranged. I will be showing you block number 2, block number 3, and block number 4. I'm also going to show you 2 different colorways. As you can see here, I have the Scrappy multicolor colorway. Then here I have the blue and white colorway only. I will show you both versions. You're cutting your 3 1/4 inch blocks. I do recommend putting them together in groups of 8 because that's what you'll need for each block. There are a couple of different ways that you can mark your half square triangles. I'm going to show you 2 methods. The simplest one, of course, is just to take your ruler, line it up corner to corner diagonally across the block, account for the width of the pencil, offset it just a hair the pencil's width, and draw a line like that on the back of each of your light colored squares. Then you would sew 1/4 inch away from the line on both sides. Then you would layer the 2 squares right sides together like that, and then you would sew 1/4 inch away from the drawn line on each side of the line. Another way to do it is to use the diagonal seam marker. You line up the point of the marker and the line right here with the diagonal point there, and you mark with a pencil on each side along the seam marker like that. These 2 lines become your sew lines, so then you pair them right sides together and you would stitch just to the outside of the line right there and right there, a thread's width to account for the fold over. And I'll demonstrate that in more detail in just a moment. Whichever method you use, I recommend you do it assembly line style, meaning mark the backs of at least 1 block's worth, so at least 8 at a time. Then you take them to the machine, pair them up, and stitch those 8 paired up blocks all at once in assembly line style or chain piecing style. That will make your sewing more efficient and effective. You could mark all of the blocks that you need for the entire quilt if you'd like, and then pair them all up and sew them all at once. I find that doing it in smaller chunks is easier for me because I can pick up and do 1 block at a time or 2 blocks at a time, and it's 10 or 15 minutes at the sewing machine. Whenever I have a few minutes, So keep that in mind if that's what works best for your schedule. Now I'm at the machine and I'm going to show you the 3 different ways that you can stitch your half square triangles. The first way, where we drew a line down the center of the block diagonally from corner to corner, we're going to scoot it over 1/4 of an inch so that our needle is 1/4 inch from the line, and go ahead and stitch. I'm using diagonal seam tape to help me by keeping the point down here on the 1/4 inch line. That means the needle will stitch on the red line 1/4 inch away, like this. If you don't have diagonal seam tape, you can use your 1/4 inch foot or a sewing ledge made of masking tape if that is what works for you. Flip it around, sew down the other side the same way. I'm lining up the diagonal point right there on the black line of the seam tape, and as well down here. Scoot it up, snug it up under the needle, and stitch. Okay, the second way is to sew on the diagonal lines. These will be the stitch lines, but I'm going to actually sew just a thread's width to the center of the block to account for the fold over that we'll be doing when we press the half square triangles back. Swing it around. You can see I've stitched just barely to the center of the block, 1 thread's width. And we do it again. Okay, and then the last way is to use the diagonal seam tape itself and skip the marking step. The way this works is I have my 2 squares right sides together. I'm going to put the point right here on the black line of the diagonal seam tape and the other point down here on the black line of the diagonal seam tape. Snug it all the way up to the needle. Make sure I keep this point down here on the black line as I feed it through the machine. That will stitch the line 1/4 inch away. Swing it around and do the same on the other side. Here are the 3 different methods. The next thing to do is to cut the 2 half square triangles apart. So we'll cut from point to point, down the middle, point to point, and here is the cutting line on this one. Then we'll be ready to press our half square triangles back and square them up. Don't worry if your sewing is just a hair off, it's okay. There is at least 1/8 of an inch of wiggle room for trimming them down. You can use a rotary cutter and a ruler if you prefer, or you can eyeball it like I'm doing, because it doesn't matter. It's in the seam allowance. As long as you're pretty accurate, it's okay. You've got to have about 1/4 inch seam, but it doesn't have to be exact. There are several different ways you can trim up your half square triangles. This is the method that I prefer, but I will show you 2 additional methods. I prefer to use the Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer. It makes trimming and squaring up your half square triangles fast and easy. For me, it's well worth the investment. I actually timed myself once, and I was able to cut my trimming time in half, from about 45 seconds to about 20 seconds on average, trimming a half square triangle by using the Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer. If you don't have this one, that's fine. You could use a block lock ruler, might work. You could use a square ruler, or any ruler that has a 45-degree angle on it. You could also use the exact size square ruler that you need, 2.5 inch by 2.5 inch ruler, which is this one here. However, when I use them this small, I find they slip and they're pretty fiddly to work with and time consuming. The last option, if you don't have any specialty rulers, you can just use the regular ruler and your rotary cutter and square it up on your mat. And I'll show you the 3 different ways now. The way the Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer works is you find the size that you need. In my case, it's 2.5 inches. You line up the dotted line on the ruler right there with the seam line. right there like that, and then you just hold it down and trim. 1, 2. Then you put your blade in the slot, trim the dog ears. Make sure your fingers are out of the way, of course. It's trimmed quickly and easily, and you open it up, you can see there is our 2.5-inch square. I'm pressing it gently. I will take it to the iron in a moment, but I just wanted you to see that. The key when using the Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer is to trim your half square triangles before you press them open. You must trim them first before you press them open. With the other two methods, you will not need to trim them first. You will press open your blocks and then trim them down. Here are two other half square triangles. We're going to use the regular ruler trimming method for these. First thing you want to do is press them back. Unless the pattern calls for otherwise, you'll want to press them to the dark side. So I lay my iron down, set the seam, pick up the top, and press it back. Now we're ready to trim them. Here is how to trim using a square ruler that is larger than the size block that you need. What you're looking for in this case is 2.5-inch by 2.5-inch. So on this particular ruler, this part over here is the 1/2-inch, and then it's 1, 2, plus a 1/2 each way. So I'm looking to line up the edge of my block at the 2 here and the 2 here, and the 45-degree angle the 45-degree line will go along the diagonal seam on my block. Let me show you what I mean. Here I've got the ruler lined up on the block. I've put the edge of the block underneath at the 2-inch line here, and then slid the ruler so that the 45-degree angle along the diagonal seam of the block. Now I'm ready to trim here and here. Carefully. Now I flip it around and double check the other side. Again, lining it up at the 2-inch, here and here, and then the 45-degree line is right at the seam, and there's just a sliver to trim on each side. And there you go, trimmed with a square ruler with a 45-degree angle line. Next, let's use just the mat and a regular quilting ruler. When you don't have any specialty rulers, you can still do this. It just will take a tiny bit longer. What you want to do is line up the block and look to where your 2.5 inches is. So over here, 1, 2.5. You can see I have at least a 1/4 inch on this side. So I'm going to adjust it so I have about the equal amount here and here. So when I trim, it'll be the same amount on each side. I'm making sure my block is pretty even with the top line. I'm going to lay my ruler down and trim here on the 2.5-inch line. Turn it around. Now I line up the block right on the zero line, so to speak, right here, and I'm going to cut again at the 2.5-inch line. I'm cutting that excess off, trimming so it's equal on both sides, like that. Now I'm going to trim the other side, doing it the same way, looking to see that I have an equal amount excess on each side, like that. That's about right. Lay my ruler down and trim at the 2.5-inch mark, like this. Flip the block in the corner at the zero mark, so to speak. Go down at the 2.5-inch mark and trim. There, we squared up the block using just our mat and a regular ruler. You'll want to repeat the marking and stitching and trimming and ironing process for all of the 16 half-square triangles for your block. Now comes the fun part, assembling the blocks. This is block number 2. Block number 1 was our 16-patch block that we did last week. Block number 2 I've named Bake. Let's go ahead and assemble it. As you can see, the block is made of a center light or white colored diamond and then 4 colored or print diamonds surrounding it. I'm going to start by forming my colored diamonds because that's how my brain works. You might want to work from the center out or from the top to the bottom, whatever works best for you. Am I happy with the color placement? I have the arrangement correct. In this case, I'm choosing to not be very scrappy. I'll pop up a photo of one that I did where it has a scrappy light background and a more scrappy version with the diamonds as well. But I think I want to move a couple things around. I'm happy with the yellow here. I'm not happy with this. I think I want to move. Okay, this is the version that I'm going to settle on, I think. Like this. Balance of yellows here, solids here, prints here, and a subtle print here. I think it looks good, and this is how I'll sew this one. Here I recommend, if you have a design board, which could be something homemade or something as simple as a baking tray or a cutting board or a piece of foam board wrapped in batting, that you transfer your block as is onto your design board. That way you'll be able to keep it together and blocks will not get turned around or out of place. Believe me, it's happened to me. When sewing block 2 together, you can see that I have laid out here pairs of the block. I'm going to sew them together in rows. I can chain piece as I go to make it go faster. Slide the next pair right up under the needle and continue sewing. And I continue until all the pairs of the block are done. Here you can see for block number 2, I've sewn the rows together, row 1, 2, 3, and 4. The next step is to press them. I'm going to alternate pressing the seams in opposite directions. This means I'm going to press row 1, all the seams to the left, row 2, all the seams to the right, row 3, the seams to the left, row 4, the seams to the right. That way when I sew the rows together, I will be able to nest the seams and press those seams open. So let's get going on the ironing. Okay, I'm going to press the seams going this direction for row 1. Now we're ready to sew the rows together. When you're sewing the rows together, be sure to pin at each intersection. That will make sure your seams nest and your units fit together accurately. For block number 2, I'm sewing the rows together. I've pinned at each intersection. The next thing you'll want to do is to press the seams open. First, I'm going to set the seams gently. Then I'm going to press them open. This may require a little bit of nudge from your fingers to get them going, but that's okay. It's all good. And if some others get in the way, just press them the way they need to go. There's the top 2 rows, and then I'll do the same for the bottom. I've pressed both seams open. Now it's time to sew both halves together. Here again, I'm going to pin at the intersections, nesting the seams as I go. Here I've pinned the 2 halves together, stitching with a 1/4 inch seam all the way down to join the 2 halves of the block. The last thing we'll need to do is to press this seam open. Here is block number 2, the bake block, all ready to be put into the quilt. The only thing you'll need to do is to trim it to 8.5 by 8.5 unfinished. You can wait and do that until all your blocks are done if you'd like, or you can trim it now. I prefer to wait until all of my blocks are complete for the entire quilt. Here is my arrangement of the blue and white colorway. You'll notice that I've balanced the colors so that I have a bright here, a bright and dark down here, a dark here, and a medium here. The lighter fabrics are mixed amongst the block as well. Here's block number 2, the bake block. On the top you can see those really scrappy block. Below that is the semi-scrappy block where I've used a single background and coordinated my points on my diamonds. And then to the right of that you can see the blue and white version. You'll want to continue with blocks 3 and 4 in the same manner, stitching the units together into 4 patches or in rows, whatever works best for your brain. In this video, I'm not going to show you step by step how to do all of that. I've done it for block 2. Just go ahead and do the same thing for blocks 3 and 4. Let's go on to block number 3, called Fry. It's going to be a chevron shape. There, I think that's better. I have darker fabrics here, along with brights here, here, here. I think this is looking good. I'll transfer it to a design board, and next I'll show you the same thing in a blue and white colorway. Here's block 3, the fry block in the blue and white colorway. Here is block 3, the completed block. You can see on the top I have the multicolor version with the low volume print for the background. And the bottom is the blue and white colorway with a low volume print as well for the background. I think they're looking wonderful. All right, now we're moving on to block number 4 called Sear. This one is fairly easy to assemble. It's basically flying geese going in opposite directions. So if I take this and this one, there's one pair. And I think I want this color next. One set. Let's do the other half of the block and turn the geese going the opposite direction. Now I'm checking it for color placement. I like the balance. I have a dark here, I have a print here and a fairly dark blue there, and the rest are a mix. I think it looks good. I'm ready to put it on the design board and sew it. This is block number 4, the Sear block. The multicolorway is on the top and the blue is on the bottom. They're looking fantastic. Thank you for watching today's video. If you like this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and tell a friend. Go on over to my blog at dconedesigns.com. There you'll find the downloads for this quilt along, including the block patterns for this week. Be sure to download all the block patterns by August 31st, 2022. After that, they'll be taken down, consolidated, and made into a pattern for sale on my website. I'll see you again in 2 weeks with the last 3 blocks for this quilt along. I hope you'll join me. Ba, ba, da, ba, ba.